Can we heckle?
No
Sure.
heckling.
Sure.
No heckling, just ultimate respect.
So no matter what he says, we can't say.
So it's not the truth, then, we're not
I
the
know,
truth.
heckling is a part of the business world, I know, heckle the video guy now, right? Okay,
How you doing, man?
test, test,
I'm good.
test,
You want me to talk to you a little bit?
a little bit,
Yeah, okay.
soft spoken. Just letting you know I'm doing a bit of setup as you.
Yeah,
And I'm doing a bit
stuff in first.
of interview with Eric and that,
Sure.
just letting you know. No heckling until it's over, but heckle all you want later, okay. Who is Eric Stach?
Eric Stach's been playing nothing but free-form improvised music since 1966, and I consider myself sort of a purist in that sense that I haven't really worked doing commercial music in the slightest. All I've ever wanted to do was free improvisation music. And I've always wanted to play a more radical, experimental, strongly personal, and highly expressionistic style of music. And I started out playing trumpet when I was 8 years old, and I did conservatory lessons for about 3 years, and switched to clarinet in high school, and then saxophones, and then during my last year of high school and 5 years of college, I played in small dance bands, small and large orchestras, playing Dorsey stuff in Ellington arrangements, and Take the A Train and Moonlight in Vermont and Autumn Leaves. And after 6 years of doing dance band music, I just got very tired of playing the same standards over and over again. And I felt I needed a more personal way of approaching my instrument. So since 1966, when I started playing at the York Hotel, I've essentially been a free-form improvisation musician. And I'm probably one of the earliest players or pioneers of the music. I consider myself essentially maybe one of the early godfathers of free music in Canada, and along with people like Michael Snow and the Artist Jazz Band in Toronto, people like that. Is that enough for the...
That's good, good intro. Okay, when did you start playing free jazz?
Well, I started when I moved to London in 1966. I walked past the York Hotel, and there happened to be a bunch of guys just setting up. Rob Bell, the drummer who's standing behind you, happened to be in that band. That's Rob Bell. So he's been drumming with me since 1966 in London. For a number of years, I toured with a few other musicians. Dennis Brown, a drummer from England who played essentially in Montreal, and I usually toured with a piano player, Kim Lundberg, and Doug Innes, a cellist from Toronto, an Afro-American cellist from Toronto.
That's good. What are some of the most memorable experiences performing? Anything that comes to mind right away?
That's pretty tough. I think we entered a jazz competition in 1966 and were accepted to play at Expo in Montreal. So we did that with, I think it was a quintet, and I took a group I formed in the early 70s, the London Experimental Jazz Quartet. I took them on a tour of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden about 1973. And I went to Scandinavia about 6 months in advance and just toured all around talking to theater people, cultural people, concert hall owners, Jazz Federation musicians. I set up the tour, and then the musicians arrived, and we did about a 2-3 week tour. But things were pretty tough. For example, before the musicians even arrived, a whole week of concerts got canceled by one of the jazz federations. And at the end of the tour, the drummer didn't have any money to get home and had to sell his drums in Copenhagen. And the piano player was in similar straits, so financially it was pretty bad. Outside of that, maybe moving to Florida in '96, I discovered a number of free-form musicians in the St. Petersburg area. Some of them members of the Tampa Bay Composers Forum. David Manson, a trombone player and a teacher at the St. Petersburg Community College, was one of the people who contacted me. And on one occasion, I'm trying to think of the musician he asked me to play. I can't think of the name now. Anyway, through David Manson, who was the leader of a band called Shim in St. Petersburg, they were sort of a raucous, free improvising group of about 6 or 7 musicians, and quite well known in the Tampa Bay area. And through David, I sort of got introduced to the St. Petersburg free improvisation people, and for about 5 years did a lot of music in Florida.
Thank you. What is your opinion about jazz music today?
My opinion about jazz music today is pretty negative. I don't even use the word jazz in my posters or my biographies or anything anymore, because I consider jazz to be sort of dialectically dead. I think it's gone through its creative process and has come full circle to the point where, since I would say the early 70s, I consider that very little creatively has happened in the jazz idiom. And I think the real creative music now in my area is in free improvisation or free improvised music. And I think that's where the experimenters are, and the people who are really trying to advance things conceptually and emotionally and otherwise.
Thank you. Okay. Final question, or second last question. How would you describe the connection between art and music and the creative process?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't consider that there's any gulf between art and music. I consider them both one and part of the other. With one exception, I think most musicians I regard as sort of mechanics who are trained in the basics of music, but who just sort of play by rote and just follow all the technical stuff per se, just ad nausea, and there's actually very little creative element to the music. So as far as jazz is concerned, I feel very critical of it. And for example, the local jazz association, the London Jazz Society, when I got here in 1966, they were bringing in Dixieland bands from Toronto, and in 2008, they're essentially bringing in white Dixieland bands from Toronto. And there's nothing wrong with that, but as far as the Jazz Society, I think they're pretty hopeless.
Okay, thanks. Last question. You're here now in London. You've traveled around and you've come back. How would you describe what you have here right now tonight? What is this place all about for you?
Well, my wife and I bought this old wrecked auto body shop about 4 years ago and turned it into an art studio for my wife. She's Catherine Morrissey. She's a landscape artist, and the large room, as you can see around here, we've turned into sort of an art gallery and a music concert space. And every year I do 2 or 3 series of anywhere from 12 to 14 weeks And this is the first situation in about 40, 45 years where I don't face the possibility of being thrown out because my music is too intimidating or too radical, to be background music. So I've been thrown out of a lot of spaces, a lot of restaurants. I've had apples thrown at me. But here, this is a perfect situation, and sometimes I bring in musicians from other parts of Ontario and Canada. This last series, I'm concentrating mostly on London people, and I'm closely associated with the Neil Spasm Band, and they're the pioneers of noise music. And they all live in London and were essentially started by Greg Curneau in the early 60s. And I think 3 or 4 of the members are still living today. And I often do things with them and together and, in partial groups. Or I have some of the members sit in with my series. So I try to be fairly open-minded, even in terms of what I present here. I pretty well give everybody a free rein to do entirely what they want on their own terms. So hopefully they feel that way as well.
That's great. Thanks, Eric.
Okay.
We're done.